phenomenon, whatever it represents, is meant to break us out of that paradigm, to make us think in other ways. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. That rings sort of true. I don't know how to proceed any other way than as a journalist would proceed, however, and that is going after the documents, trying to find witnesses. I suspect that for this thing to ever answer itself, for us to really get a firm grip on what really is going on, it'll take one of two things. One is somebody from the inside with impeccable credentials who clearly was in a position to know, who comes forward and spills the beans and can demonstrate, can show us those beans. That's number one. Or number two, the visitors themselves, wherever they're from, wherever they're here, make a demonstration of some sort. We joke about them landing on the White House lawn. Well, that would work. That would do it. Land in a craft in which we could kick the tires and we can clearly see that these are beings from somewhere else. Whitley Strieber said it years ago. He said, these beings are the true architects of the secrecy. They could break this open anytime they want to. They choose not to for whatever reason.
T-minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. Go for main engine start. 3 main engines up and burning. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery and the Upper Atmosphere Research Satellite, beginning a new era of studying the Earth's environment from space.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
Mission Control Houston now controlling the flight of Discovery.
On September 15, 1991, the Space Shuttle Discovery captured on videotape several anomalous objects moving in unusual trajectories. 4 NASA scientists were asked to look at the footage, concluding, the objects seen are orbiter-generated debris illuminated by the sun. The flicker of light is the result of firing of the attitude thrusters on the orbiter, and the abrupt motions of the particles result from the impact of gas jets from the thrusters. To illustrate the sequence of events, the flash is the thruster firing. The abrupt change in direction of the particles are a result of the gas jet which accelerates the debris. Dr. Jack Kasher, a physicist at the University of Nebraska, has recently completed an exhaustive analysis of the event.
What I'm going to tell you is the result of my analysis as a physicist and a scientist, just taking the data and seeing where it goes. And the bottom line of my investigation is I started out my investigation assuming that there were ice particles and trying along the way to prove that there were ice particles. And I found out that at least if you take the data that I've got and the analysis that I've gotten, that I've done of it, that's a completely untenable position. The camera was focused at infinity, and any little specks would just be invisible. And you can tell that's true because toward the end of the segment, the camera pans down and looks at the side of the cargo bay, and you can see it's grossly out of focus. Then it focuses and then turns toward the front. So it was focused at infinity, so any little particles near the camera don't work. Ice particles don't work. And after that, there aren't many options. Meteors, absolutely not. They don't change direction. And space junk and satellites don't change direction. There are no other options. These are objects that are clearly at times above the air glow, and so they're maneuvering, and they are in outer space. Therefore, they're spacecraft. I don't see any other interpretation that you can have. They are some kind of spacecraft.
At the time this event was recorded, the shuttle was northwest of Australia, moving southeast into the sun. Here is the camera view from the shuttle just prior to the event. What appears to be the horizon is actually the top of the Earth's air glow. The Earth's physical horizon is located about 60 miles below the top of the air glow. Here you see the changes of direction of several of the objects after the flash. The main object will appear moving to the left, followed shortly by a flash, at which time the objects abruptly change direction, followed by 2 streaks. This is a close-up of the same sequence, screen right, showing several objects at the time of the flash. Note the regular pulsations of the objects, which is inconsistent with tumbling ice particles. Shortly after, the camera pans down to the shuttle bay. The jerkiness is a result of the camera movement. Note this object, when silhouetted, appears to have the shape of a domed disc. Later in the mission, this object shot through the upper corner of the frame. Enlarged and slowed down, it also appears to be disc-shaped with a regular pulsation. First, a simple observation. If the particles are accelerated by a blast from the attitude adjustment thrusters, then it would follow that the camera, which is attached to the shuttle, would register the change in attitude of the shuttle. Dr. Kasher has calculated the change would be about 6 degrees. However, no change in the camera frame occurs throughout the entire sequence. Another simple observation is if the abrupt motions of the particles result from the impact of gas jets from the thrusters, then the trajectories of the objects should trace back to the source of the acceleration on the shuttle. As shown in this illustration, that is not the case. This is a graph of the main object's movement over time. The short downward section here indicates that the object is moving to the left in the frame. The upward section indicates that the object has changed direction and is moving to the right in the frame. This area, which corresponds to the flash, indicates that the object has stopped dead in its tracks for a full half second.
Now, you tell me how this could work. If it's an ice particle, it's somewhere up about here. And I can prove, using the methods that I just pointed out, that before the flash, before the pre-flash, it's moving like this, in this direction. And the reason it stops, then, has to be that something is pushing back in this direction. Obviously, that can't be the shuttle. So the pre-flash explanation doesn't work. The reason that object, whatever it is, stops is not one of the attitude adjuster rockets. So we have a tremendous problem because it stops right at or just before the main flash. And it simply can't do that if it's an ice particle.
Finally, Dr. Kasher has calculated the velocity of the main object and compared this to the known velocity of the thruster aboard the shuttle. For example, if the object is an ice particle, we can easily determine it to be 65 feet from the shuttle. At the flash, the object stops for a full half second before accelerating in a different direction. If the flash is a thruster firing, then the gas jet takes a half second to reach the object and begin to accelerate it. We therefore multiply distance with time to arrive at the exhaust velocity of the thruster, which should compare to the known velocity supplied by NASA of 8,400 feet per second. Yet these two figures are not even close to each other. To illustrate this another way, in order for this sequence to work, the object would have to be 22 miles from the shuttle. Knowing the direction that the object is accelerated, the thruster would have to be 15 miles from the shuttle, which clearly cannot be the case.
So what does this all come down to? I've really tried to do a genuine, honest scientific inquiry into this. The reason I did it, of course, is because I didn't think the objects would end up being ice particles, and that implies that they are spacecraft, which would be a very important thing. But I tried to be fair in what I did, and I didn't push my conclusions, and at times it got to the point where I thought I would have to drop the whole thing because I got to points where I thought it was going to fall apart. Did not fall apart, and you've seen the analysis. There really is virtually nothing that supports the ice particle theory from the data that I have that are subjected to the analysis. And there are, on the other side of the coin, at least 5 proofs that the objects were not ice particles, therefore spacecraft. And they were either extraterrestrial or terrestrial, obviously. That's the dichotomy that we have. And if they were terrestrial, that implies a whole new level of technology that's levels and levels beyond anything that we have on this Earth. You saw some of those accelerations that we discussed, tremendous accelerations that would flatten any human pilot far beyond the capability of any craft that we have. So whether they're terrestrial or extraterrestrial, they're far beyond conventional programs. If they're terrestrial, that implies that we've been working on them for decades. Also implies that the Star Wars program is, I guess you might say, a sham, because we already have craft that are far beyond what we expected with Star Wars, and so that's been all kind of a waste of money. If they're extraterrestrial, it's really big news. We're being visited by other planets. It's also scary because those streaks that went through there, you can interpret those as well as I can. One possible explanation is that we were firing at them. That's a scary scenario. And so, once again, my analysis is a scientific one that at least satisfies me that those objects were not ice particles. And beyond that, we're all in the same boat together because we're speculating, and I have no evidence to prove what one was or the other, or whether one explanation works or the other, but it opens up the door, it opens up the can of worms to discussing some of these questions.
It tells me that there is a phenomenon, that there are extraterrestrials here beyond all shadow of a doubt in my mind. And I have other evidence at the same time. So this is corroborative evidence to more empirical evidence that I run into occasionally. And it simply tells me that somebody else is here. Now, the other thing that stands out in my mind is, and this comes up frequently when I'm lecturing someplace, they say, well, who are they and where do they come from? Well, the problem there is it's not a simple they. It's very complex, and it's not a few theys. It's literally thousands of them coming from thousands of different origins on 1,000 different kinds of business, using 1,000 different kinds of craft. They're all generally disc-shaped, but they're all different in detailed construction, materials, operation, behavior, everything is infinitely different. Even the beings aboard, even though a third of them are humans, placental humans like us, within that third, there's infinite differentiation, difference in skin color, difference in size of the nose, size of the eyes, morphology, shape of the face, muscles or no muscles, length of the fingers, number of knuckles on the fingers. All kinds of things can be different, and the same thing with the grades. There's infinite variation there, and they all, unless they're identical, they are all probably coming from someplace, from different places. They're here on different business. They have different kinds of propulsion systems. Some of them carry fuel of some kind, like little pellets, and some of them don't carry any fuel at all. They harvest their energy from the space around them, wherever they happen to be. And those all are technology we haven't even approached yet. We don't know how to operate a craft with no fuel. It gathers all of its energy from the ambient space around it as it goes. But others, thousands of others, have solved this technology. That tells us another thing. It tells us we can do it. All we have to do is find out how we want to do it. And there may be a lot of different ways to do it because they're not all doing it the same way.